Hello. So today I will introduce you to MySQL, how to use it with your FiveM server, how you can implement it in your scripts, and basically why you need MySQL and databases at all for FiveM servers. So basically, MySQL and databases is just a type of storing data or information, and it has quite a few advantages comparing to other types of storing data. For example, you could store data just in your variables. That would be pretty efficient and good, but the problem is that it is quite a bit vulnerable. And if you restart the resource or restart the server or something crashes, you just lose all the data and all the information you had. You could also store data in a file and in your server side or wherever, but obviously that is not the best way because it's much, I think it's much harder to read and write data to file. It needs much more code. It needs there's lots of things that could happen when you write and read data from the file at the same time. You need to read the whole file if you want just one line or just one piece of data. And that's where the databases and MySQL come handy, because here you can just read one piece of data, one line, one specific field or wherever, and you can do it much more efficiently and with much less code than you would do with a file or something. So yeah, that's why mostly MySQL and database is used for any server. Basically, that's why you need it to store data of users, of cars, of some coordinates, of items, wherever it could be. And yeah, and first thing you're gonna want to have in your server is probably one of the most popular libraries, which is FiveM MySQL async. You can just find it by writing MySQL FiveM, first GitHub link, and just copy that to your server. I'm not gonna show you exactly how to run database. I think you can find all the configuration tutorial on here, what exactly means what. And anyway, there's plenty of videos online on how to set up database and MySQL for your FiveM server, so you can just look up for that. But yeah, in this lesson, I'm just gonna show you some basics of how to use MySQL on scripts. Once you have your MySQL installed in your server, you obviously need to start it and set up on your config file. But I'm hoping that you already know how to do that. If you don't, just go and look for it, like I said. So first thing, I have created a little resource with client, server, and fx manifest files. If you want to use MySQL library on your script, you're going to want to add this line: add MySQL on the server scripts, MySQL async library lib mysql.lua. So then you will have access to all MySQL functions and methods and whatever you're gonna want to use. So I made out of tables, specific tables which you store specific data at. I'm not gonna go too much in depth of MySQL as language. There's so many tutorials and documentation and everything about that, and you can find it easily online. But the main things you're gonna want to know is three main functions, or probably I could call them actions with MySQL that you can do. Is insert, which is gonna insert data into database. select, which is gonna fetch data from database, and update, which is obviously gonna update it. You can find most of the things and most of the examples in documentation for this library, and yeah, just simple examples on how to use it. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a table. Like I said, I'm not gonna show you how to host a database. I'm gonna assume that you already have done it. And in this case, I'm using just FiveM on Ubuntu server. If you're using Windows, you're most likely gonna want to use XAMPP and HeyDaySQL, which are probably the go-to things, which are just plug and play, basically simple to use and simple to set up. If you're using Ubuntu, it's a bit, or Linux, it's just a bit more difficult to set up your MySQL database. But yeah, you can look up for tutorials on that as well. So I'm gonna start with creating a MySQL table just by running query on my on the SQL tab on PHP MyAdmin, and I'm gonna say create table. I'm just gonna call it lesson, and I'm gonna open these, and I'm gonna say ID int 10 auto increment primary key. So this table is gonna have a row called ID, and it is gonna auto increment, which means it's gonna auto increment its ID depending on how many values there are in the table already. Then I'm gonna create let's say key, which is gonna be varchar of 10, maybe 30 characters, and I'm gonna call it, and I'm gonna add not null to it, which means it cannot be null at any case. And then I'll just add value. Let's give this int of 10. Yeah. So int and varchar are types of data. Varchar could be called as string of 30 characters. Int 10 means that it is integer of 10 digits. And I'm just gonna add not null to this as well. Am I missing something? Oh yeah, I just realized that I was not able to give key as a name for a row, so I just called it name and value. So now once we got that, we can click go and create our table, which we now can find. So yeah, now we got a table with ID, name, and value columns. And now I can just use this to insert some sort of value, some sort of row. And I could say name is John, and value is 20. And that's how it looks when we insert it to our table. But I'm not gonna use this. I'm gonna do something like that inside our FiveM script. So I'm just gonna basically use a command, write, gonna call it write, add function handler to it. And now to write some data into your database, I'm gonna want to write MySQL dot async dot insert insert into lesson, which is our table name. Then we're gonna add our columns, which is gonna be name and key. Or was it? Oops, and value. And I'm gonna say values at name and at value. So what at name and at value means is that is gonna link to my parameters that I put outside of the query, outside of the string. And I can do something like that and say that our name is John and my value would be would be 20. That would be pretty much the same as I would do something like this. And add the name here. But instead we have like the option to just put the put our parameters outside. And if I would add this now, I'll just put maybe some different name, George, for example, yeah. And now if I would run the script, write command, that's gonna insert George and 20 to our database table. I'm not gonna do it in game. I'm just gonna run it from the console, just so it's easier. So I'm gonna start MySQL lesson, and I'm gonna say write. Insert into, I don't know why it gave me a warning, but okay, whatever, I guess. And there we go. It added the George and value of 20. Most likely you don't gonna want to have these hard-coded. Instead, you're gonna want to bring some parameters from outside. So I'm gonna create new variable called name, and I'm gonna give args to string args1, and then I'm gonna give value to number args2, and here I can add value, and instead of this I'll add name. So what I can do now is write Jeff35, and this inserts the name Jeff, which I added as a parameter to my command, and the value of 35. This function, MySQL async insert, also returns a insert ID. If I want to access that, I can do insert ID. I can add function as a parameter to this to insert function, insert method, and I can do print insert ID if you would like to use it for whatever reason. You can find a bit more on what the functions return in the MySQL async documentation, which you can find in the GitHub page. You can also use execute, which is gonna return affected rows, the amount of affected rows. Fetch color just for selecting. There's also store, which returns store ID. Not sure what that exactly means, but yeah. And yeah, if, like I said, if you want to have a look, just have a look. And now, after I write a command, that should return me the insert ID, which should be 4. Jeff45. Yeah, and that is 4 because the ID of that is going to be 4. Yes, just like that. Another thing we can do, and which you're going to want to do eventually, is to read data. To read data, you're going to use MySQL, MySQL async. We can either use fetch scholar or fetch, how is it called? Fetch all? Yeah. In this case, I'm gonna use fetch all. Basically, the difference between those is just, I think fetch scholar just selects one, and fetch all selects all of the elements that match the query. So what we can do here is we can say select all from lesson where, or I'll just leave it like this for now. I'm gonna add an empty object and a function handler with results parameter, which is going to be filled when this query runs, and this function is going to fill this variable with whatever data it selects. So then I can print JSON and code results. So that's going to show me the all array or the all object that it's going to return from the database. So let me restart it, then read it, and as you can see, it shows me all of the names and all of the values, as well as IDs for each and every single entry in the database. ID, name, Jeff, whatever. I can also add, for example, I just want to select specific name, so I can add where name is equal to @name. And then here I'm gonna want to add @name is equal to string args1. So if I restart it and say read Jeff, that's gonna return me just the entries that had name Jeff. I can also do where ID is equal to ID. I guess I'll just add a new one and say ID is equal to number. And read 2 is gonna return me the entry that had ID equal to 2, and the rest of it. If I don't need some values, if I don't need, for example, I don't need ID, I just need name and value, I can, instead of putting the star sign here, I can do name and value. Or I can just do value, because I already know the name. And that's just gonna give me the value. And like I said, I can do the same with name. Let's add the name. What's the issue here? Is it because I put that? Yeah, that's because I put this. So yeah, as you can see, it returns me the value and the name. Another thing that you might want to do is to delete something. To delete, something from database, you're gonna probably want to use execute delete from lesson where name is equal to name. And our name is gonna be equal to string args1. And here I'll be able to add function handler, and I think this is gonna return me affected rows. Affected rows. And I can just print that here. So by doing that, I can say delete. What names did I have? George, Jeff. Let's say Jeff, and that's gonna return me two affected rows, which means there were two entries that had name Jeff. And if I would go to my database table here, you could see that I don't have any Jeffs anymore, just because I deleted all of them. Another thing that you might want to do is updates function. And to update something, you're gonna want to run MySQL async execute again, and I'm gonna say update lessons set value is equal to value plus how I can call it, number, where ID or where name is equal to name. Now I'm gonna want to wait. Should have done that. Now I'm gonna want to add number. That's gonna be amount of which I want to change the number is equal to number args1, and the other one is going to be name is equal, I'll just do args2 in this case. Don't forget comma here. And add a function that's gonna again return me affected rows. So if I restart it, I can run a command update, and I have to pass number, for example, 9, because our current numbers are 20 on both. Update 9, and our name will be George. Oh, was there no George anymore? Well, what did I say? No such table lessons. Oops, I called the this wrong. And that gave me 1 because it affected one row. And it added 9 to our previous entry, which is now 29. So yeah, there are so many different types of queries and the logic behind them, which you can run on your FiveM scripts. But I think we just like barely scratched the surface of what you can do and how you can implement them to your FiveM scripts. And if you're gonna want something more in depth or more advanced for me to show you in next videos, please let me know down in the comments. Probably if you want, you can like the video if you like it. Maybe don't if you like it. And thanks for watching this time. I hope it helped you somehow and you learned something new. So yeah, thank you. Bye bye.